I want to start out by saying that I have seen this whole series all the way through. That being said, I've only seen each season one time, and it has been many years, especially for the early ones, since I've seen them. With the end of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, I got this itch to restart this series. And I knew going in there would be a lot that I forgot, so it kind of felt like a whole new show. So this will be my first installment in my Game of Thrones review series. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and tell a friend. And if you're new here, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Game of Thrones Season 1. Real quick, I just want to mention that all of my knowledge of this world is solely based on the information that I've gathered from the TV series. I haven't read any of the Song of Ice and Fire series, but I did recently start Book 1 of Game of Thrones. Anyway, let's get into this. Looking back, I remember I jumped into this show about 2 years later than everyone else. Luckily at the time, back in 2013 or 14, whenever it was, I had friends that didn't spoil anything. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I loved this show. And once I started, I couldn't put it down. I mean, this is near perfect TV. Near perfect. Fucking, oh, so close. Thanks a lot, Season 8. I mean, even kicking off with Season 1, hell, just the first episode exemplifies how complex and compelling this show was going to be. Think about it. In episode 1, we're introduced to the Stark family, the White Walkers, the Night's Watch, the religious aspects that envelop this world. The North, direwolves, Jon, and the tension that his existence causes within the Stark family. We learn about King Robert and his rebellion against a tyrant king, and the death of the woman he loves, who also happens to be Ned's sister. We get introduced to the Lannisters, Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei, not to mention the incest. We travel across the narrow sea to Essos to discover a marriage between Drogo and Daenerys that has been set up by her brother as part of his plan to reclaim the Iron Throne. And all of this is tied together around the mysterious death of a close ally and mentor of Robert and Ned that sets off a cascade of events to follow. All of this just in episode 1. Just reflecting back on the first time I watched this years ago, I remember I had to rewatch this episode like 4 times because there was just so much going on, so many introductions, so much to wrap my mind around. And that's not a bad thing. It's so impressive how much they were able to capture just in this first episode without it feeling overstuffed. And from there, Season 1 just takes off and soars. I mean, this is one of my favorite seasons of not only this series, but one of my favorite seasons of television, full stop. It is a feat in television production. So let's start there. The production design is incredible. Everything from wardrobe to the interior and exteriors of castles and cities to the gorgeous locations. Everything is so detailed and beautiful. You're absolutely immersed in this world. Even the sounds, everything, it's all done with such care and expertise. Not to mention that epic opening credits. I totally forgot how catchy that opening theme is. And I caught myself humming along to it pretty much every time. It's one of those opening credits that you can just never skip. As to the story, as I stated above, Season 1 does a lot of heavy lifting just introducing this world. And it all stems from the death, well, later on revealed murder of Jon Arryn. And to be honest, every storyline that trickles down from that main one is interesting. I don't think there's one in this season that I don't enjoy, which I don't think I can say about every season in this series, but I can confidently say about this one. And every storyline is meticulously mapped out and so intricately devised that you never know which character you want to put your chips on. There are alliances formed, bonds broken, and betrayals aplenty. And one of my favorite aspects of this series is how these characters get split off into their own individual narratives. And when shit hits the fan, all of these characters, they just get pulled off into separate directions. Like the Stark kids, for example, they all get pulled off on their own little adventures of self-discovery and their own little narratives that they're drawn into. And you're rooting for them along the way, but at the same time, you're pulling for them to eventually just come back together and find each other. And it's stressful, but it's also completely just immersive. And every character is just written with such nuance and complexity that you find yourself over the course of this season, and honestly the series as a whole, falling in love with a character in one scene and then hating them the next. Not to mention the absolutely stellar performances across the board that bring these characters to life, adding a whole other level of weight. And every time you think you have the narrative figured out, the plot zigzags and you're left in shock and awe. And even though I had seen this series before, it didn't keep me from still just getting so emotional at the infamous twist at the end of episode 9. I mean, goddamn, that death. As someone who had no prior attachment or knowledge of this universe, that scene was so ridiculously astonishing. And I know this series is an ensemble, but a newcomer spends the whole season believing that Ned is the hero of this story, essentially the narrative's main protagonist, and then he is just so unexpectedly executed, and you're just left thinking, what in the fuck just happened? And it doesn't get easier a second time around. Ned is arguably the most honorable and good-natured character that exists in this universe, a beacon of light for anyone that comes into contact with him. He always, no matter the consequences, tries to do what is morally right and just. And just seeing his beloved character finally sacrifice his honor for the sake of his daughters, for his family, and still meet the end of a blade is just gut-wrenching. It's so funny because watching this back, up to this point, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if it's different this time? And every scene leading up to it, I'm just constantly trying to coach Ned not to make that decision. It really is a testament to the writing of this series, and it's insanely engaging. I miss shows like this. I feel like we don't get enough of them. I'm so glad I went back and restarted this Game of Thrones journey. I enjoy House of the Dragon, I really do. I didn't love Season 2, but I think it's getting back to the roots of what made the first 6 to 7 seasons of Game of Thrones so goddamn good. I have been itching for television like this, and currently there isn't anything that will satisfy it. I was definitely reluctant to restart this though. I know towards the end I'm just going to feel a mixture of resentment, disappointment, and rage as the writers just fumble the conclusion, but for now, I'm going to just try and enjoy one of the most groundbreaking shows to ever grace our screens. Season 1 of Game of Thrones will always rank up there with True Detective Season 1 and Season 5 of Breaking Bad for me. Season 1 of Game of Thrones is perfection.